Okay, it's about 10 o'clock. Might as well get started now. Um, my name is Sean Redzar, a digital media artist at Luxion, makers of KeyShot, and today's webinar will be focusing on animation essentials. Um, you know, the animation tools and KeyShot will let you create awesome and simple animations quickly and easily. And just a quick disclaimer, although this is an animation essentials webinar, I am assuming that many of you have already played with KeyShot and know how to create well, know how to create um, still images already. So I'm just making that assumption. This is basically a beginners for animation. So just putting that out there. First thing you might notice about my UI is this the new KeyShot 5 UI, and it is dark. And the way you can get that is if you go to Edit, Preferences, Interface, under Theme, I have selected Dark, and that will switch it to a dark UI. I like this a lot because when I'm working with other applications like Photoshop or Premiere, other Adobe applications, a lot of them use a dark UI, and I just like to have a kind of matching look. I also have the background brightness set to darker, and that creates this darker UI. So I just want to get that out of the way so just people don't get confused about what am I working at, what version is this. So it is the exact same KeyShot 5, it's just the UI looks a little darker because of that settings under preferences and interface. So that's where you can get that. Another thing I just want to get out of the way too is a lot of times when we do these webinars and tutorials, people ask, where can I get this model? Let me just throw this up there real quick. We get a lot of our models at turbosquid.com. This model in particular was the Aston Martin DB5 by Next Image on TurboSquid. This is where you can obtain this model. Unfortunately, we will not be able to distribute this model because it is not like a free model to distribute. But if you would like to get this model yourself, it is available on turbosquid.com. All right. Let's go ahead and get into the animation. So if you've never worked with animation, how do you get into the animation timeline and controls and such forth and whatnot? The easiest way is going into your toolbar. You'll see these icons, and next to the project icon is the animation icon. Go ahead and click that, and it'll pop up the timeline. It's really easy. You click it and it goes away. There's several ways you can access that. You can go ahead and click that, but also if you want to do it with a hotkey, you can hit the A on your keyboard and it'll pop it up. And also if you go to Window, it's also there as well. So we've provided in 5 many different ways for you to access your different window panels just to make it easier to fit your workflow. And again, as always, if you've worked with the other panels like the scene panel and materials, you can always double click the title bar right like this, and it'll undock it from your window. You can move it around as you like. You can always double click it again to automatically dock it within your window. So there's always many ways to adjust your workflow that way. The next thing I want to do before we start making animations is I'm going to control the cores. This is also for your benefit of the webinar. I'm going to lower the core usage so that way there's more cores devoted to the GoToWebinar application. So instead of going to your preferences panel, your cores are available right here on your toolbar ribbon right here. So I'm just going to click on the core pull down and just set it to, I'll set it to 9 cores for now and see how that works out for now. And another thing I want to adjust while we're doing animations is going into performance mode, which you can access on your toolbar right here on the icon. It's like a little P next to the KeyShot yarn NURBS. Like you can just highlight that and click that, and I'll go into your performance mode. The reason I'm doing this is usually in your workflow. Animation is usually at the end of your workflow. You already know the lighting and the materials you've already set. Things look good and sweet. Next thing, and the last thing you want to do is kind of give that extra level of presentation and add some animation to it. So at this point, you already know what it's going to look like. So we're more concerned about the motion, and to get a more accurate view of the motion and have a quick res of your real-time view, I suggest going into performance mode to look at your animations as they res up in your timeline. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at our animation UI. Right now, there's not much here to look at. You can see the controls to move the scrubber here, and some of the things here, right, like the loop, preview, and settings. I will circle back to these as I add more into our timeline, and it'll actually have more of a visual representation of what's going on. So let's go ahead and just jump right in and make our own first animation. This is really easy. The first thing you can do is just click on the animation wizard, just right on the toolbar for the timeline. And the first animation that's available is a turntable. What's great about the wizard also is as you click through the different types, it'll actually give you a quick preview of what the animation is going to kind of look like applied to your scene. So there's all these different types of animations you can see. All right. Actually, instead of turntable, that's a little kind of easy peasy. Let's go ahead and just go right into translation. I'll circle back to turntable after we explain kind of the concepts of rotation and translation and that first, because turntable is like a simplified version of rotation. So I'll circle back to turntable after we go through some other animation types. So let's do translation first. So I click on translation, and you'll see the cube moving back and forth. So what basically is just like translation is just like if you're going to select your object and adjust the translation settings on your position settings in your scene tree. So it's very similar to that. So if you want to think about that kind of correlation of your workflow in KeyShot, if you know how to do translation movements in KeyShot already, then the translation animation is very similar to that. So in the wizard, it'll pop up kind of a mirror of your scene tree to kind of select what you want to animate. You can twirl down these items, but let's go ahead, just click on the top level object, which is the car. You'll see the outline selected. Go ahead and push next, and here you will see it'll walk you through what kind of animation you want to do. Like I said before, these controls are very similar to what if you've worked with the move tool or the translate parameters within your scene tree right here. So if I wanted to move things in a certain direction, the scale of this is really large. So I'm going to go ahead and type in a value. These values are not probably going to be the same for what you're working on. This is just for my own scene right here. The scale is kind of large. As you can see, I just typed something in, but nothing really happened. This can be kind of discouraging for a lot of people. It's like, oh, I don't know why it's not working. Okay, so once you type something in, to see it actually working, you can go to your timeline here, and you'll see that it's already kind of created an animation node here while you're creating the wizard. And above that node, you can, under whether these ticks are, that's where the timeline, you can scrub through. It's called scrubbing through. So as I click somewhere in between this green area, I'm going to see the animation taking place. So you can see that happening. Yeah, so this is called scrubbing through the timeline. And you can see that little white line is actually showing the exact location of the frame of where your animation is. So a lot of times if you know where you want to end up, a lot of times I will just snap to the end of my animation, and I can just adjust the settings at the end. So I don't want to move it to the side, I want it to move forward. So maybe I'll just go to set this to 0, and maybe I'll make this a higher value. Oh, maybe not that one. Maybe okay, it's going backwards that way, so I'm going to set to negative value. Yeah, so now that I've added that value, you can see what I wanted to do was have it move forward in time. Yeah. So yeah, this value is dependent on the scale of the model and in the scene you're working in. Like I said before, this is because I'm working on this car. It was modeled within the scale of probably in millimeters. It's a pretty large value. So just play with the values within your own scene to get the right results. This is also, and the next thing I'm going to talk about is the origin. As you can see, this is translating X, and this is the direction of X of the model itself. It might not necessarily be the origin of your scene, which you can switch here to make it a global animation, or global origin, sorry. And that's very similar to, like, again, like I always like making correlation to your existing KeyShot workflow with the visualization tool. If you click on the move tool, it's just like going from local to global for these axes. It's local is the origin of the model that you created in your 3D application, and global is the KeyShot global origin. This is a little more apparent when we're talking about rotations. Right now with the translations, it's not as apparent what these switches will do. So let's just stick with origin local. Oh, bring this to show the coordinate legend. So yeah, so as you can see, the origin of the model is the same as global right now. So you won't be able to see really a big difference right now. But like I said, when we go into rotation, and we'll have that option again, you'll see the differences. Okay, so we have that set. We have it moving forward. The next thing we want on the wizard is time settings. This can be kind of confusing at first, but let's walk through it slowly and see what each one does. So the first choice is linear, which is the default selection. As you can see, it's giving a quick preview, which is, I think, a great feature that KeyShot does. It shows the cube moving at a continuous velocity, basically. You just watch that cube go. So it doesn't slow down, doesn't speed up, it's going at a constant rate. The next option is ease in. It's great because if you see this, it shows a comparison of the linear up here, and the ease in, it shows what it is below that. So if you select ease in, the animation will, as you can see, kind of slowly accelerate to a constant velocity. See how it slows at first, but then speeds up, and the final frame is going to be the same. So it doesn't change the location of your final frame of your model, but it does change the velocity of how fast that model moves through time. And if you go look below that one is ease out. And again, as you can see, it's kind of the opposite of ease in, where it's moving on at a faster rate, and then it slows down as it reaches the end of the animation node. And like I said, it's not changing the length of the animation or the location of where the animation is going to end up. It's just the velocity at how it moves through time. So that's all it is. So if you want to make it look more natural, a lot of times you'll use these types of controls. And then the last one is ease in and ease out. So as you can see, it slowly speeds up in the beginning and then slowly speeds down. Kind of like, it's a little more natural. A lot of things move in this fashion if you want to make it look like something moving through space that has like a it has like, kind of gives it some mass instead of making it look so 3D. It has a natural movement through space, basically. So these are great tools to kind of give a more natural look to your movements. And again, like a lot of your menu or your items in your panels, you can collapse and expand these in your wizard. Okay, so that's motion ease. Below that is the start and end duration. The start time is pretty much where the animation is going to start. So if you increase this, you can see on the timeline that animation just jumping location. So as I move that up, you can see that going up and down the timeline, and that changes how long it is, how, where does the animation stop, basically. And duration, this is kind of an overall length of the animation. So if you want to have it, let's say 5 seconds, but you don't want it necessarily, don't really know where it's going to start or end, you can just say, I know it needs to be a 5-second long animation. You can set that to 5, and just you can drag that around as you need to. So you can set the duration instead of just setting start and end to control that. Oh, and also another thing I want to show you is, while I did only go in one cardinal direction for my animation, you can also, let's say, have several parameters in the XYZ, and automatically interpolate the beginning and end points in straight line from where you started to where you want to go. So you're not relegated to just moving in a single XYZ coordinate. You can move in several directions at once to kind of really reach from one point to another in space, and you don't have to go very rigidly XYZ. So I just want to let you know that you're not limited to that. All right, so once you're finished with the wizard, go ahead and click Finish, and it will place the animation in your timeline thusly. And like I said, you can scrub through it again, just like you did before you finished the wizard. And what's great is in the UI is all the settings that you have selected are still editable on the animation properties area on the right of the timeline. So everything that we've just talked about is still accessible right here. That used to be in the scene tree. So if you guys were used to seeing animations before where the properties were, they have moved to the animations timeline area. And since we have something here to play with, let's go ahead and look at some of the UI elements as well. Like I said, this helps control the scrub bar, like I said, talking about earlier. The first one is the start, which will move you to the very start of your animation. And then, of course, the mirror to that is end, which moves you to the very end of animation. And the one button in from each of those is rewind and forward. So let's say I'm like right here, and you just want to incrementally move a frame at a time, just because you need that precision. You can move one frame at a time in your timeline to get to the exact location. And the play button. So this is going to show you a preview in real time of your animation. Hope this is coming through on the webinar. Sometimes this can be a little choppy, but This is a quick way to see in real time the animation that you've set up. And since I just demonstrated right now, since this icon, it was activated, just the loop icon, when I push the play button, it'll automatically circle back to the beginning of the animation and play it through. This is great if you're making evaluations on your animation and you want to know, you kind of need to see it over and over again to see where you would need to tweak and fix your animations. I usually have it on a loop just so I can really just keep watching over and over and really nitpick exactly the adjustments I need to make. Another option for you is the preview button. So what's the difference between a preview of the real time and this preview? Let me just go ahead and click that and you'll see. So what preview does is it'll actually start rendering a smaller version, a small test render basically of your animation. This just takes a little bit longer than just pushing play, but it will give you a more accurate one-to-one of what your animation will end up looking like. I'm going to go ahead and stop this right now because we don't have time to sit through looking through all the waiting for the render to finish. But that's basically what that is. You can kind of see what that looks like. I mean, just the couple frames I did render out. And if you like it, if you want to save this to show this kind of preview file, you can also save the video out here. You can save it as an AVI in a folder that you can designate. So those are your options. If you want to save out a preview and you need to send it to a client, it's a great way to kind of work with other people and kind of show your work before you commit to a final render, which can take a lot longer. So that's one of the options for preview. Go ahead and close this and don't save it. So I'm going to close it. Yes, I want to close it. Okay. And next to that is a little gearbox icon, which will show you settings for your timeline. Right now, the default is at 30 frames per second, which is pretty standard. A lot of times, a lot of video formats use 30 or 29.9 frames per second. I use this quite often because that's the setting that YouTube uses. So if you're publishing to YouTube, 30 is a good standard. And a lot of videos just use 30, just a good standard to use. Timeline, this is up to your preference, seconds or frames, to kind of see what kind of units you're going to see on your timeline over here. So look, right now it's on frames. Let me go back to switch to seconds so you can see the difference. I'm going to hit OK. And then these are previous settings, basically how big and how long you want the previews to take to render that on that little preview file that you're creating. So that's what preview settings are for. Go ahead and hit OK. You'll see right here that it's now switched from frames to a timestamp. Basically, you can see exactly how long this animation is running for. So this is set to 5 seconds right now. Okay. All right. So now we have a translation animation in here. Let's go ahead and look at a rotation animation. We went through the wizard last time through selecting one of these guys here. Let me just go ahead and show you another way of accessing animation tools. So if you already know how to work the wizard, the next step you want to do is you could always go to your scene tree, right-click the object you want to animate, hover over the animation, and select the animation type you want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click the object, animation, and select rotation. This is the next animation type I want to demonstrate to you guys. I'll go ahead and, another thing in the timeline that's really helpful. As you can see there, as I added the animation, it's kind of bypassed the animation wizard, so it just automatically set default settings for your rotation. As you select it, all these settings are available on your animation preferences area. But what I want to do is isolate my rotation animation and just see the effects of my settings on with rotation. So what I can do is actually uncheck the item in the timeline for translation. That way I can just really just fine-tune the rotation that I'm going to be working on right now. So I'm going to be doing that for all of these animations I'm going to be showing you today. Again, you can, so just with default settings, it's going to scrub through and you can see what's going to happen. So it's rotating on the X, on the original local. What I want to do is actually, what if I want to just rotate this door out? So what I can do is go ahead and delete this animation. So I'm going to right click the item in the timeline, just select delete. Yes. So instead of selecting at the top level like we did before, you can go ahead and select a part of the area you want to rotate. And I know I want a door, I'm going to select the whole door. So on my scene tree, I'm going to find that part I selected and then move up and select the entire group of parts that comprise the door. So now I have the whole door selected. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and right click, animation, rotation. And let's scrub it and see what happens when you do that. So it's rotating it, but not quite on the axis that I want. I want it to look like a door opening. So to get to the results I want, let's go ahead and look at our preferences and settings and see what we can do to make that happen. So let's first go down, and we'll worry about the degrees later. Let's just make sure we fix the axis. So let's go on, like right now it's on the x-axis, which you can see it's rotating. I'm going to click on Y instead and see how that looks. Nope, it's not the right axis. And click on Z, and yeah, that's kind of the right axis, but not quite the same right pivot point. You might be noticing that while I click Z here on the coordinate legend, it's actually rotating on the Y global. That's just where where I said previously how the axis orientation is more apparent probably with rotations. Here you can see that. So what's going on here is actually rotating on the original local. So what that means is whatever you modeled your model, wherever the origin is located in your model, in your modeling application, that's what is being used right now. If you select global, it'll select the axis, the coordinate legend of KeyShot right now. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. See how it's switched around like that? A lot of times I'll select original local because I will model where I want the pivot points within the modeling application itself. So it's a lot easier for me to kind of wrap my head around that. Again, select whatever setting suits your workflow best, but I like using my original local because I know where those axis points are. So I'll go ahead and select the Z on the original local. And the pivot point, this is where you can change where it's actually rotating right now. As you can see, center is selected on default, which is pretty much selecting the centroid of those parts and rotating around that. What I do know is this model was created with the origin point aligned with the joint of the door. So if I select origin and animate it again, you'll see that the door is turning, although it's turning inside. So now we have a little bit closer to what we want to do. But now we can go back up and switch the degrees. There's a little control here that you can swivel around and control it. like I said, you can go to the end of the animation to see how far you want it to travel, and you can control it like that and just see, okay, where do I end, how I want it to end up eventually. So maybe just around, that looks about natural right there. You can maybe type in a more exact value once you kind of played with where you want it to be. So just set it to 50. I just like having round numbers, just to be exact. So now we have the door opening and closing. And again, let's go look under time settings. You can set it to be more natural with one of these ease options. So let's have ease in and out, and you can have it ease in and out of the animation. Okay, so that's great if you modeled the parts with the correct origin of where the pivot points are supposed to be. But whether, let's say you didn't do that and you don't know where the origin's located within regards to your pivot, and you're like, wow, what do I do now? And luckily, KeyShot has an option for you to solve that problem. So what you can do is, under pivot point, you'll see an area for pick and reset. I'm going to have to select, first let's see pick. And it'll let me pick a part in my scene tree to be my pivot. Right now I don't have anything right now to pivot around that I think that will correlate to what I want. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and go to Edit, Add Geometry. I just add a cube. It doesn't really matter what it is. I just add a geometry to kind of use as a pivot point. Let's go ahead and add a cube. So now that I have a basic part in my scene tree, I can select. Let's see where it is right now. So I'm going to select the cube I just added in my scene tree. I just found it. It's at the bottom where usually new parts are added. So I went to scroll down in my scene tree to find my cube. So I just scroll down, found my cube. Go ahead and activate the move tool to see where it's at. Go ahead and scale it up, and then I'm going to move it around just to see where it's at. Just use the scale tool. I just type in the value here, so because I know it needs to be kind of big. Let's see what 200 looks like. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, let me just do this again. So select cube. Select the move tool. Move this out. I'm gonna set the scale kind of big. Move it up. Just so you can see what we're working with. So now that I have the cube kind of in space, I know this is going to be the pivot point. I'm going to look at the center of my cube and just trying to place it where it needs to go. And let's say instead of the pivot being where the normal car door pivot is, let's say this is like a mod and it's like a suicide door type opening. So let's go ahead and move the pivot point of the door near the handle and see what happens. So I'll just move it over here. Just kind of line it up with the body so it pivots kind of around that area. All right, let's just put that there and see what happens. All right, so now I have the cube where I want the door to pivot around. I'm going to go ahead and select my rotation animation for the door. Like I said, these are all, you can, instead of creating a new animation, you can just edit the one you just made. And under pivot point, I'm going to go ahead and pick that cube. So I'm going to click on pick. A little window will pop up to help you pick the geometry you want to use as your pivot point. I'm going to select the cube that we just created. Select OK. And let's scrub through and see what that looks like. As you can see, now it's pivoting around the center of that cube. And you probably want to switch the direction of it turning. So once we have that going in the way we want, and go ahead and snap to the end of my node. You can snap to ends of your animation nodes by holding Shift while you scrub. So hold Shift and drag, and it'll snap to the ends of your animation nodes. So that's a good tip if you want to be really precise to beginnings and ends of animation. A lot of times you want to line things up perfectly, so that's a good way to do it. So I just want to see what it looks like at the very end, and I will go back to my animation properties area, and I'll just kind of scrub this little dial to kind of see where it's accurate. And let's just say it opens like that. So let's scrub through the timeline and see what that looks like. So now we got a suicide door opening. And then once you have it set up that way, you probably don't want to see this cube in your scene. So what we can do is hide your cube, and the animation will still be there. So yeah, so even if you have the cube hidden from your scene, so all I did was just in your scene tree, just uncheck the cube to hide it from your scene, it still will function as a pivot for your animation. This is great for a lot of types. Oh yeah, I use it constantly for whenever, especially if we are using models that I didn't model personally and I don't know where the origin is located for each part. It's a great way to really control where your rotations are happening. Oh, right. Let's go ahead and let's see what else is on the rotation. Oh, and one more thing, the dynamic pivot point. This is a setting that is a little more advanced, and it deals with animations that have multiple rotations in a hierarchy. I would suggest you not working with this right away if you're just your first time working with animation. We will cover this in a future tutorial or webinar where we have more advanced topics in the animation. So yeah, just leave that off for now if you're just starting out. It gets a little tricky and really fast if you don't know what you're doing with it. But yeah, I mean, the pivot point is a godsend. So for simple rotation animations, this is the way to go. And like I said, the time settings are very similar to what we talked about previously in translations. All right, so now that we have that and we know kind of what rotation animation is all about, I'll go ahead and turn that off so we can start from scratch again. Let's go ahead and go look at your turntable. So I just went back to my animation wizard. I'm going to select turntable. As you can see, it's just turning your model around. Let's select next. I'm going to select the entire model, select the object to select the top level. And again, it'll create a preview node where you can actually see what that looks like. As I scrub through, so you can see what's actually doing. So what's great about Turntable, it kind of it simplifies even further your animation if you know if this is exactly all you need. A lot of times, you know, in KeyShot, what people want in animation is just a simple turnaround of their model or their scene. They don't need any more complicated XYZ coordinate animations. They just want their model to turn around in space just to show off all the surfacing of the model from different angles. So what Turntable does is it's just super simple. It rotates on the global Y from the center of the scene, and what you can control from here is how much the turntable turns around. So you can have it a full 360. You can actually have it more than a full 360 if you keep going on this dial. You can have it, you know, several rotations in this turntable, so you're not limited by a single rotation. Likewise, you can also just do an increment of a circle and just do part of a rotation. Let me show you what what it looks like when you have more than one rotation. There's about 2 rotations. Just scrubbing it through. This is not correct velocity because I'm just pulling it through the timeline. So you can see there's within this node it rotates twice. I might be kind of going fast for the webinar to catch up, but let me go a little slower. And you'll see that it actually rotates twice within this node, or more actually. Also to note, if you're doing that kind of thing, adjustments, like if you're adding more than one rotation within the node and haven't really adjusted the duration, the velocity of the rotation will be faster. So they're just kind of, logic about animation. See how fast it's going, rotating at 650 degrees of rotation within 5 seconds. And if I go back to 360 and play it, you'll see it's a lot slower. It's actually half the speed of what I was doing before. That's not to say if you want to keep that same rotation. Just if you want to have 2 rotations or more than one rotation in the animation, you can still do that and keep a similar velocity. We can do is, like, let's say I'll go back to 600, a little bit over to 1 rotation. It's not full 2 rotations, but it will play faster if you keep it at the same duration. To kind of fix that, if you want to make it a little bit slower, you can increase the duration by clicking on here to increase the duration, or let's go ahead and finish this, and so we can edit it here. Or if you want to increase the duration without messing with the dials here, you can always hover over the ends of any node and change the duration of your animations that way as well. So if I want to make it a bit longer, so that way the animation will happen a little bit slower because it's parceled out in a longer amount of time. So if I play it again, you'll see that the animation is running a little bit slower than it was before. And it's still running the full 600-degree rotation. So let's go back into our settings and kind of walk through some of these other parameters. Right now it's rotating the center of the model. You can also set to rotate the environment. Right now it's in the middle, so you can't really tell the difference. But if I moved, let's say if I moved model, select environment, see how it changes the center of rotation by selecting environment versus model. So by selecting model for center rotation, it will rotate around the centroid of your model, and if you select environment, it'll also rotate the center of your scene environment. And below that is a simple clockwise, counterclockwise, and this will just choose the direction of your rotation. So if you choose counterclockwise, it'll move in the reverse direction of what it was before. So let's go back, you'll see. And again, go below that. Under time settings, you'll see very similar controls like we have for the rotation and translation settings below there. There's a question, was a cube added to the door assembly to rotate the entire door assembly? No, it's just separate. It's just a completely separate cube you can use. It's just a reference geometry that is added in the KeyShot scene that does not need to be attached to the door. Just some clarification for the pivot point rotation. Okay, so now that we've gone through a lot of the transformative types of animations, there's one more type that I want to go over real quick. Go ahead and turn this off real quick. Let's go back to Scratch. Let's go ahead and open the animation wizard again. Under our model part animation, there's one more that we haven't looked at, and that's fade. So go ahead and click on fade, and you can see a preview of what's going on. It's basically, it's changing the opacity of a part in your animation. This is really useful, especially if you have interior parts that you want to show off in your scene, and you can actually animate having like a full body view. And if, let's say, you have an engine modeled in your car and you want to just show off the engine without animating the hood coming off or whatever, what have you, you can have the hood change opacity and it'll show the interior parts within it. So for this scene, demo, I'll just pretend that there's some internal mechanisms within the door, and I just want to show off what's inside underneath the side panel of the door. So you can do, like I said before, you can select within the scene tree, like the duplicated scene tree in your wizard, or I'm going to just go ahead and select a part in my real-time view, and automatically will select it. Or should, oh, because I didn't do it through there. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and find. Oh, it'd actually be easier if I did this through the scene tree. So I'm just going to select the part I want to fade. It's selected there. Just go ahead and right-click that part, go to Animation, and select Fade. So here's my fade animation. I'm going to put it in the beginning here so it's easier to look at. So as you can see, the default is just going from fully opaque to transparent as I scrub through. And again, if you want to look at what you can affect, it's going to be, look, you can find that here in the preferences for your animation. So right now it's starting at 100 and fading to 0%. If we reverse that, let's see what happens if we reverse it. So now if we reversed it, it's going from transparent to opaque. So this is also great if you have some internal views that if you start with an internal view and you want to go to a full view of your model, you can reverse it that way. So you just scrub through it again. You can see. We can also do is, let's go back to fade from 100 to, let's say in your animation, you don't want to have it to be fully transparent. You want to see some of the original surfacing to kind of have context to where the internal parts are to the rest of your model. So instead of going fully transparent, you can always go from 100 and then fade to, you can select a value in between 0 and 100. So let's just say 50%. Just type in 50. And that way, you can end up just showing off part of it. and still having some of the surface visible. Underneath that, you'll see time settings again, very similar to what we've talked about previously. So it'll have very similar ease options, exact same ease options for more natural velocities of movement through time. Okay. Once we have that in, you're probably thinking, well, once I have it, a lot of these animations, you start with a good view, and you go to another view where it kind of shows an internal view. And it's like, well, now I want to go back to where I started from. What's the easiest way to do that? A lot of times, you can create another fade animation, set it from 50, fade from 50 and fade to 100 at the end. An easy way you can do that is just select the part or the animation in your timeline, right click it, select mirror. And that should, as you can see, as I scrub through the mirrored animation. So here's the original one at the top. It's going to stop at 50% opacity. And now that I've mirrored it, it's right here, the mirror at the bottom. As I scrub through the mirrored animation, you'll see it becomes opaque again. So that's a great easy way if you're doing detail views, or another great way to use it is for exploded views. So let's say I'm going to go ahead and hide these animations right now. Let's say I want to animate this translation. Let's go ahead and translate it moving through space. That's the right one. Why? That's probably negative y. Yeah, so if you have a part that you're moving through space for, like, let's say an exploded view, it's a really common application for animation is exploded views. So let's say move this, let's make it even further. So it's moving through space, like you have it moved out about 500 to kind of show the internal parts. You can scrub through it, you'll see it moving. And at the very end, you want it to collapse together. Go ahead and right click your timeline, select mirror again. And as you can see, as I scrub through, it places it back to the original location. You can also, a clever way to do this is after you've created your mirror, you can go ahead and take that mirrored animation and put it near the end of your animation. That way, after, let's say you have it exploding and doing all this crazy stuff, and you have a turntable, and you only want it to come back together at the very end, you could just drag this near the end of the animation. Let me scrub through it. I'll push play. Let's see. So it'll animate out, and at the end, it'll come back in. It's hard to see there, but we can turn off the turntable so you can actually see what's going on. So I just moved that animation node near the end of the animation, so it has some time to. The state of the door will be exploded for a time being until you want it to come together at the very end, and it will come back to the body. So that's just a good way of staggering your timing. It's really easy to click and drag your nodes and place them where you need to be, and just really create an elegant transitions from your different animations. As you can see, the timeline is getting a little bit long now. A good way to kind of manage all your nodes is this little zoom icon here. You can click and drag this, and it'll change the scale of your timeline. So I just scale it down that much so I can want to see all my nodes at once. It's a really great way, and if you want to fine tune again, you can scrub to where you want to go, and then zoom in again to kind of locate a little more precisely what's going on in that node. And also, as you can see, if you highlight these magnifying glasses, you can incrementally zoom the timeline. Alright, so now we have quite a few things going on here. It's getting a little bit confusing, actually. So a good practice to do when you're doing animations is these nodes start getting out of control and you don't know what's what. A good way to do some organization is renaming it. So you can always rename your animations by highlighting your animation node and just changing the name here. So it'll auto create a name for these animations based on the part name. But if you want to be more specific, I'm going to name this door mirror. In the preferences area, and it'll update the name in your timeline. So it's a really good way of organizing your animations and knowing where is what. Basically, it's almost mandatory when you have a lot of these nodes going on at once. Okay, so now I have these. Let's say I've named all of these. Another way you can organize your animations further is placing them into folders. To do that is easy. Just select an animation node by clicking on the name, hold Shift, and click another animation node that you want to organize together in the folder. So I want to organize my door animations, basically, the exploded view animations. So I'm going to right-click those two together and I'll select Add to Folder. You can name this Door Explode. And that will create a folder that has placed your two animations in there. As you can see in the timeline, it fills in all the gaps in between, as it'll create a single animation node that encompasses all the nodes that are contained within. And what's really great about this is if you know for a fact that these two animations need to live within X amount of duration, instead of interpolating or trying to figure out how long each one's going to need to be equally, you can highlight the folder node and just drag that down, and it'll automatically reduce or increase the size of the animation nodes located within them to be equally. So as you can see, as I'm dragging it, the nodes get longer and shorter automatically. And you can always, once you have a folder, you can see a little arrow triangle at the side, and you can click that to collapse your folders and have a little cleaner look, and you know that that's your Door Explode. You can hide them and show them as you need. It's just a really great way to just manage your animations, because it can get out of control really fast, and it's a good practice. Just stay organized. So now that we have that, let's go back into our oh shoot, or it's already 11 o'clock. I'll quickly go through the camera animations. It's pretty simple. Let's start with the orbit. go ahead and select camera 1. Another thing to note is when you're doing camera animations, before you select the camera, before I do any camera animations, I need to have a saved camera. It seems pretty obvious at first, but a lot of people forget that in order to animate camera, it's good to have a camera to animate. So before you start your camera animations, go ahead and create a camera that you want to use as a base point for your animations to start with. So let's go ahead and have these cameras. I already have 2 cameras saved out. So go ahead and open my wizard, select orbit, and select my first camera, animation camera 1. Select next. And the controls here will look very similar to your turntable animation, but there's a difference. I wanted to show this in this webinar for sure. Is just go ahead and have the default 360. So these controls look very similar, and we'll hit finish. And if I scrub through it, it'll actually look very similar to our turntable. But what's different is, we'll go ahead and in my environment, I'll just turn on my lighting environment instead of a color backplate. So let's see what happens with a camera orbit. So as you can see, the environment is actually moving with the models. The camera is actually moving. It's not just the model. So all the lighting and reflection on your model will be consistent with the camera movements. It's as if let's say if you're outside and you want to make it look like the camera is actually accurately moving through space, and your reflections are accurate to the trees and the buildings that are reflecting on this car, you want to use orbit probably. But if let's say this car is in a studio on a giant turntable, let me show you what that looks like in relation to the environment. See how the environment is actually stationary and just the object is moving. It's very important to make that note, because as you can see, the shadows and reflections and lighting, they're quite a bit different as far as what your results you're looking for. If you want it to look like a studio setup, that's the object that's moving within a space versus the camera is moving within space. So those are little details that make a big difference when you're making your animation. So let's go ahead and go again and start the animation wizard. We'll go just really try to go through all these animation types quickly. There's zoom. So I'll go ahead and click next. I'll click animation camera 1 again. As you can see, whenever I'm making animation, it creates the node at the start point of where my scrub bar is, basically. So since mine was right here, it created it there. So be mindful of that when you're creating your animations in the wizard. So if I made it here, it'll automatically create the node over there. So those are just things you got to keep in mind. So the zoom animation is going to basically it's replicating when you're zooming with the camera with your the camera movements in your project tab when you're just working in your scene. So if you know how to work this stuff, it's pretty much very similar. There's not a lot of magic to it. It's just going to interpolate the distance, basically. So I know this is a large scene space. I'm going to actually use a larger value here. Like I said previously, it's going to change for what your scene units are, and this is just what the units I'm using for my scene right now. So let's see what happens with 500. And I'm going to go to the end of the animation. As you can see, it's very slightly zooming in. ahead and finish. Drag this to the beginning. And I'll go ahead and add another animation. Inclination, like I said, it's like a correlation to working with the inclination slider in your normal workflow of KeyShot. Like, so I'm going to work on the inclination here. It's exactly what's going to be animated here. So let's select camera animation 1 again. Hit next. And I'll just leave that default for now. And just drag this back here at the beginning. I'm going to turn off the zooms just so we can just really look at what's going on with the inclination. So you can see the inclination is moving up that way. Let's say I just want to move it up just a little bit, like that much. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the end of my animation and reduce the amount of inclination to, let's see, maybe that much. So, or maybe even less. Oh, just maybe just 8 degrees. So it's very subtle. Yeah. And then the last one I want to, or no, the last one here is translation. Here's a little preview of what the camera is actually doing in space. So I'm going to go ahead, select animation camera 1 again. And just going to type in the value here. And scrub through it, see what that looks like. So see how the camera is actually physically moving up, so the objects are moving out of frame a little bit. What I want to happen is actually the opposite. So I'm going to just drag this again to the beginning and drag it to match, while holding shift and dragging on this, drag it to match the duration of the other camera animations. So I'm going to hold shift and snap to the end of my animations there. And I'm going to go to the negative direction. See, make it move more in frame. There we go. And let's move it also the other way too. To the right. Let's see if we can move it to the right a little more. So it kind of ends in a centered view. We'll go ahead and scrub through it. Let me just isolate the movement. You'll see the translation. So this is what actually is happening with the camera, with the translation. And let's go ahead and turn on inclination zoom back on and see how that looks. So as you can see, with just using a couple animation nodes, very simple, subtle movements, it's really easy to create some dramatic camera pans of your model. Alright, so those are the camera animation types. I want to talk about one more. I just want to talk to, I'm not going to show it too much because it's a little more advanced type of animation. So I'm going to find this last type of animation, I'm going to go in my scene tree, in my cameras. I'm going to right click one of my cameras. I'll go ahead and right click animation camera 1. And under there's another animation type, so you can see the different animations are already available here: orbit, inclination, zoom, translations, which we've talked about already. And there's another one that's new to 5, which is camera switch event. It's a little more advanced. I'm not going to go too much into it. We'll have another webinar tutorial talking to it, but it's basically switching from one camera to the next. in your timeline. So it's actually going to, let's say if you want to switch from camera 1 to camera 2, that's what you want to do. It's kind of like editing without within the timeline without having to use Premiere or any other editing software. If you want to have an all-in-one kind of solution without having to cut different renders in another video editing software, this might be the solution that you're looking for. But that, again, like I said, that's a little more advanced, and then we'll cover that in another tutorial in the future. So once we have all that set up, sorry it's going a bit long, I just need to get to the output right now. Once you have your animations ready to go, the workflow is going to be very similar. Like I said, we try to keep it these workflows similar to what you're used to. So we're going to go ahead and click render. And you guys are probably all used to the still image settings here, but as right next to it, to the right of the little still image, if you haven't seen this before, there's a little still image icon or a button on top, and to the right of that you'll see the animation button right there. What we want to do is click on the animation button, and we will get our settings for our output for animation. The resolution settings are very similar to what you've used to in your still image, like right here. So you can type in a value or select a preset on the right of it. Below that is where things change a little bit. The first thing we're going to see is time range. Entire duration is what it means. It's going to basically render every frame that you have animated. So it'll take the node that is the longest or the node that's furthest down the timeline and use that as the duration. So right now, as you can see, the object turntable is the longest node, and it'll tell you that your entire animation if you look at your render options here, the duration will be 7 seconds, 7 seconds long about. And if let's say if I take one of my nodes and place it further than the turntable node, then automatic updates to change the duration to kind of accommodate the location of the node that's at the end. The next option is work area. So if you have a lot of nodes and you don't necessarily need all of them animated in your output, you were just working with a lot of the different nodes and you weren't really sure what you needed, and at this point when you're rendering, you know exactly you need it. Let's say I only need it from frames from here, from 2-second mark to the 4-second mark. That's where you can select work area. And what that means is if you look at the timeline, you'll notice these two little flags, these blue flags at the top of the timeline. What you can do is actually drag those to specific areas in your timeline, and what will happen is it'll render just between those frames, the frames in between those flags. So you can see the duration has been changed to 1 second, almost 2 seconds long. That's because that's the amount of frames that are available within those flags. The third option is frame range. You can type in the frames that you want animated. So if you precisely know exactly the frames that you want to animate, you can enter in the frames here. So if you want to start from frame 10 and go to frame 20, you can do that, and it'll tell you the duration here and the amount of frames being rendered there. So there's a lot of different ways of outputting your animation. The next thing you want to look at for sure is video output. Since you're making animation, you want a video file, so make sure these are checked. And here you can name it here, the name of your animation, and also choose the file location like you're rendering a still. The format here is you can choose from AVI, MPEG-4 uncompressed, QuickTime, and then QuickTime MPEG-4, and Flash Video. There's not like one format that is better than the rest. I will say that just use the one that you know will fit your needs. My personal preference is QuickTime, not QuickTime MPEG-4, because this is actually compressed, a compressed file format. I work personally, I like to edit my videos myself, So what I like to do is get an uncompressed file format, edit it in Premiere, and then output it in the compressed format. But if you want to go straight from KeyShot to YouTube, maybe this might be an option for you. Although like I said, it's going to be compressed, and the video quality will not be as great. But if you don't have access to post-processing, this might be an option for you if you want to have a smaller file. Same with this. If you want to have MPEG 4 AVI, that might be an option for you. But personally, I like working with uncompressed file formats just so I have flexibility of my outputs when I work post-processing. So I usually choose QuickTime. Another option below that is frames output. What's great about KeyShot is you can actually output every single frame as an image. So let's say you're doing the entire duration of this 8-second long animation with 267 frames. What KeyShot can do is actually output every single one of those 267 frames into an image file that you can use for your post-processing, for what have you, for your marketing, whatever you need. Every single one of those frames can be outputted. And these settings will be very similar to your still image settings. So you can name it, set the location, and select the format type. And you can also include transparency if it's a TIFF or a PNG. What will happen though is in the folder itself, you can see in the name, it's taking the name of the video, and with this little percent symbol, what will happen is it'll add incrementally number each frame of your animation that way. So that way, if you can find the frame here, like if you have these settings, if your timeline settings units are on frames, let's go back to frames. Let's say it's frame 22. This is the frame that you want us to look at that you've rendered out. So let's say you're at frame 22. I want the render for that frame. So you can go into your folder, find Austin & Martin DB722 JPEG, and that'll be the exact frame that we're looking at here. So those are great little options for you. I usually have frames output checked all the time, just because I'm spoiled with the immense hard drive space. But you can uncheck that as well if you don't need your frames to be rendered out, because it does add quite a bit of file space to your hard drive to render all these images out. So that's up to you. Under that is performance. This is very useful if you want to render it during the day while you're working. A lot of times people render overnight, but sometimes you don't have that option. So a lot of times if you're rendering right now, you can do it like kind of similar how we were working in the less cores within our real-time view. You can actually assign amount of cores to be dedicated for your render. That way you'll have some more cores to work with if you're doing like Photoshop or Premiere or 3D modeling. You'll still have some juice to use while you're rendering your movie. And these can take, rendering QuickShot is quick, but it's still going to take some time more than using stills, because it's basically rendering every still image as a frame. So it's going to be 267 frames. That's how long it's going to take. Like at 260, however long it takes to render one still image, times that by the amount of frames you have. So just kind of take that into account when you're rendering your movie. So that's why sometimes people want to adjust your core usage, and that way allow you to use your machine still while it is rendering. You can also click use real-time settings to kind of mirror whatever you're used to using here. So I have it set to 9 cores, so it'll automatically render at 9 cores. And the render mode is very similar to your still image settings as well. So yeah, and all these other settings for quality, Q, that's all the same as you were working with your still images. So that's basically it in a nutshell for what you need to get going creating animations in KeyShot. Yeah, I mean, with all these tools, you can create some really dramatic and dynamic visualizations of your scenes. Let's see, is there any other question? We're already like 20 minutes past, but let's see if there's any other questions. Okay. All right. So yeah, thanks to you everyone for joining us today, and be sure to visit KeyShot/learning to see more learning videos, and also our YouTube channel. Make sure you like it and subscribe, and we will see you later. Thanks. Bye.